Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm so excited to be joined by the fantastic Michelle Monaghan to talk all about the Apple TV Plus series Bad Monkey. And one of the first things that I wanted to ask you about was in terms of developing and building this character Bonnie, because she's such a fantastic character, but she's also an enigma. And even as the
Yes.
audience, we get to know more about her throughout the show, but there's still always an element of her which is unknown. And
Mhm.
so I was really, really interested in how you started figuring out all the layers of who she was, because you kind of want to give certain details over, but it gives a lot of creative space to make choices in so many different directions.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I mean, there is a level of mystique, I think, that Bonnie has from the very beginning. And of course, as you start to delve into the scripts, as you get them, as you start to go through the series, as you're developing them, I was really pleasantly surprised that they kept surprising me. And the thing that they maintained was that mystique about her is that she always had these very different layers that you couldn't quite pin her down. And I guess one of the things that I employed, I guess, is one of my tools in developing Bonnie, or this particular role, was animal symbolism, which is a really fun tool. If actors out there haven't used it, I highly encourage it. You essentially choose an animal, and then you really inhabit that behavior of that animal, and you really study it. And for her, I chose a panther because she's very cat-like and lithe to me, and very sly, and she likes to pounce, and she does a lot of things that are unexpected. And so that was one of the things that was just kind of very fundamental for me in terms of developing embodying the actual kind of character and a lot of those fun qualities that I could physicalize. And then, of course, then you've got just this beautiful writing that Bill Lawrence has, and I was so excited because, getting to work with him specifically when he's in the room, there are so many things that evolve and happen, and you play with and you have fun, that you just constantly feel that you are trying different things, and you're never done developing a character because he's just so full of wonderful ideas.
I'm so glad as well that you were bringing up the animal work, because when I've heard you talk about that with characters, it sounds like it's a more recent thing that you've done with characters and roles. And so I was very curious about the inception of when you started to realize that that was a really helpful tool for you in developing them.
Yeah, I actually learned about it from my friend, Matt Bomer, actually, who is a wonderful, wonderful actor, as we know. And he shared with me he had been dabbling in it. And I thought, wow, that's really right up my alley. Just because I've always just loved the idea of animal symbolism, and then to kind of apply that to character work. I thought, wow, that could be something really interesting to do. And so I started working with a particular coach, and it's just been a really, really fun process. I haven't used it since. I think there's very specific characters and roles that I think it's right for, and then I use other tools for other things. But this one it really spoke to me.
And it sounds like you work with acting coaches quite a lot, even at this point in your career. Were you working with an acting coach on this role specifically, or is it more just an ongoing thing that you kind of tend to do for yourself?
It was specific to this role. I was working with a coach, but it is actually really an integral part of my learning process as an actor. I didn't study acting, and it was really sincerely something that I kind of fell into in my early 20s by way of having modeled, and then that kind of parlayed into doing commercials. And then all of a sudden I had an audition and I got the job, but I was like, wow, I don't even know how to do this, but I'm making some money. I guess I'll get an agent. And shortly thereafter, I fell in love with it, of course. And then I was like, wow, this is what I'm meant to do. So it's only been, at different stages of my career that I've felt it to be really imperative to be introduced to different techniques, in order to keep broadening my skills, and to continue to be challenged. I always have this fear that like I'm going to run out of ideas, and I hope other actors feel that way. Um, so I'm always looking to replenish, the tools in the toolbox, to just always being open to playing. I think I've been very fortunate to, be able to kind of dabble in various different tones and genres and things like that. So that's like an exercise into itself. But I felt specifically actually working with Bill, he's his own genre in a sense. And he's got such a beautiful way of really in the intersection of humor and drama for him, I think is so specific. And so I really felt compelled to really be on my toes and to be able to tap into whatever he was trying to do.
I also like that whenever you talk about this character and working on this show and working with Bill Lawrence, that you always kind of describe it as a collaboration in terms of building out who she was,
Yes.
which I think is something that often isn't talked about that much, that it is a collaboration, even with the acting coach that you were working with. And in that collaboration with Bill, I was curious about your thoughts about Bonnie's backstory and her childhood and her upbringing, because I feel like from the details that you bring to screen, there's such a rich sense of the type of childhood that she probably had growing up and what has led to a lot of these mechanisms within her.
Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Yeah, I don't necessarily think she had a great example by way of parents, and that was something, of course, it's backstory. I don't know if her mom was there for her in a way that she needed her to be. I think she was kind of taught to fend for herself at a very young age. So I consider her very clever from a very, very young age, and figured out ways to kind of manipulate situations, perhaps weasel her way out of predicaments, something that she's tried and tested, and she's used her feminine ways and her wiles. And so that was really fun also to get to tap into kind of her sexuality was something that I don't necessarily explore a lot on screen, but I loved to that she had such abandon. And so that was really fun to get to play as well. And so clearly, I think that was a big part of her backstory as well, is just sort of utilizing all of those assets and qualities, even when she shouldn't be.
I think one of the things that's so interesting in her as well is she's someone who clearly has a lot of intellect, and there's the constant moments where she really wants to be able to share the literature that she loves with other people. And there's moments where it feels like she wants people to look below the surface with her and really kind of get to know her. And then there's times where she very intentionally uses it as a tool that people don't. And so, how did you calibrate between those spaces of, I want
Oh.
you to know me, I want you to see the vulnerability, but also moments where it's like, I'm going to use the fact that you don't?
Yeah, wow, thank you. You really see Bonnie. I love it. I think she's very calculated. I think that was one of the interesting and fun things to get to play, is because you might not necessarily think that she's like this bibliophile, she loves her books. And so she's very well read and very well spoken, and she utilizes that to her advantage when she can. And then, of course, when she's got somebody on the hook, she just kind of trails away. And that was a lot of fun to play. And I love to lean into those moments. I feel like she's very smart about being able to utilize those things about her when she needs something in return.
And in terms of the vulnerability beneath the surface, I wanted to ask you a little bit about capturing that as well, because again, it's something that she doesn't really want the world outside of her to see, but there are moments that we see it. And I think especially with Vince Vaughn's character, that's someone that she's able to be a little bit softer with. And so how did you find that side of her?
Well, I mean, that's a testament to Vince as well. I mean, and I'd like to talk about him for a little bit, because he's such a wonderful actor and he's so smart. And talk about keeping somebody on your toes. I think, you know, when you're working with somebody of that caliber who also is been given material from Bill, right? Which Bill tonally has just this, he's so adept at writing things that are a little like outrageous and really funny, but also they're really grounded and they're very vulnerable. So it's a really fun dynamic to get to play and to get to work opposite someone like Vince, who is so, it's like acting gymnastics, right? Who can inhabit those qualities so much and so well. It really helps ground and make those vulnerable moments really sweet. And I think I really loved that relationship, the dynamic that the two of them have, because I think they both love to get a little bit lost in each other. I think that well, from Bonnie's perspective, they'll always be on again, off again. They'll always be together, you know. And I think I think it's a really lovely and sweet and actually like a very real dynamic that I think oftentimes that people experience.
Right. I love that you mentioned the fact that there is this sense of they're always going to be in and out of each other's lives in some way, shape, or form. And there's that moment where she talks about how she tends to be drawn to men that make her feel safe.
Mhm.
And so, what was it about Vince's character, Yancey, that you felt like his character really made her feel safe in a different way to the other men in her life?
I think because he's also in search of something. I think that what makes the two of them kind of work is that they're in this place of searching and self-discovery. And I think that was a quality that she really likes in him, and that he's quite open and keen and kind of hangs on her every word. And so I think for her that feels like a very soft place, and that he doesn't want anything in return from her. I think is what makes that tick.
Yeah. And you were bringing up the phrase in terms of kind of keeping you on your toes and making this show. And I imagine that playing a character like Bonnie must be like that throughout every single scene, no matter what, because she's such a live wire and someone that could go in any direction. And so, did you find that you, in turn, had to have a certain kind of spontaneity going into scenes? And, maybe I
Oh,
have an idea, but maybe all of a sudden she's going to react and go in this direction instead.
for sure. I mean, I think that was what was always so fun and scary on the day, right? As it is for every actor. I think the best thing that you can do specifically in these situations when you're working with comedians and comic writers such as this, that that's their jam, right? They're just going to want to play, is to be as prepared as possible on the day, in terms of learning my lines and knowing my lines and coming in with different ideas myself, and being prepared to get what was on the page, and then knowing as soon as we got what was on the page that it was going to all go out the window. and and that there were going to be 10 different things thrown in every which direction, and that we were going to play. And I think that was one of the things. I think I'll take away one of the great quotes of Vince Vaughn, during shooting. He was like, "All right, we got that right." And yeah, we got it right. Let's play, and you're like, "Oh shit, here we go. We're going to play." Um, and that's where the gold is. There's something obviously you feel like that's like a little daunting, right? But at the same time, it's so rewarding. It's so creatively rewarding to be able to improv and to work like that. And when you're working with people as talented as as Vince and Bill, you know that they've got your back, and they're just only going to be throwing the goods at you.
Right, because you had specifically also wanted to make a comedy at this point after your Netflix
I
series when it came
did.
across your desk. And I love the way as well that you described that it kind of felt like it took you back to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and kind of early aspects of your career when you were making this and filming certain scenes and just playing in that comedy space. What were some of the moments that you found it really tying back to some of the earliest things that you'd learned in terms of comedy?
Oh gosh, yeah, I did. I really wanted to get back to my comedic roots. That's where my career started off, and for whatever reason, I was like, okay, it's time. And then, fortunately, Bill sent me Bad Monkey, and jumped at the chance. And I think, getting to be in those scenes with Vince right off the bat, those first couple of episodes, specifically, I felt really in my comfort zone. That kind of really took me back, having that beautiful kind of banter, that writing. It was really easy and fun. And that was really like a big highlight for me, is being able to kind of get to work with Vince doing all of that. That was perfect.
And it must be so wonderful as well when you have a script that has such an idea of the tone, which goes back to the way that you keep describing Bill's writing, because you've previously mentioned that you wanted to take on this role before you'd even got to the pages where Bonnie
Yeah.
showed up. It was already like, I understand this world. And so how
Yeah.
did that immediate understanding of tone also really help you to cement a lot of the choices that you were making for Bonnie and just knowing how that was going to fit into it all?
Yeah. I mean, I think I knew as soon as Bill called, I just knew that this was somebody I wanted to work with. I mean, he really is just a genius in terms of his writing and his tone. And so, regardless of what role I was about to read, I knew, I was probably going to say yes, a 90% chance I was going to say yes. And then after having read, of course, the first episode, it just got me really excited to get to delve into something like this, because it's such a smart show, and not just, not all the not only are all the actors in the ensemble and everyone's so fantastic, but shout out to Carl Hyacin, and of course his amazing world that he just, that you just immediately lose yourself in. And I think that was part of it, is just understanding what the Florida man is and what that world entails. And that informed so much of my character, certainly. And there Florida is a place where people go to get lost. The Keys is, if you don't want to be found, you're going to probably be down in the Keys. And just knowing those key elements of the writing gave me such a sense of kind of fundamentally who Bonnie was, and then sort of building upon that with each episode, and learning more and more about her.
Yeah, I was also curious how the tone and the way that he creates these worlds where it can be satire and comedy and sarcasm, but then also vulnerability and softness and really real things helped you when it came to the storyline where Bonnie was previously a teacher and had an affair with a student who was underage, and then he reappears in her life at this point, because it kind of allows you to play to the comedy of someone who's just trying to deflect from all their life choices, but still to also go through that realization of, wait, I never realized I was the problem and I was.
Yes, that's such a good point. I think you nailed it. The sarcasm's satirical, and then it is all soft and grounded. And I think, Bonnie's been running so much for so long, from her past. And I think that she's somehow kind of denied what any of her misgivings, right? And all of the things that she's done or maybe been guilty of. And then they come back to haunt her, right? And she has to confront those very things. And I think that it was really interesting to be able to kind of play that humor, to try to deflect, certainly with this young man. But then, as the episodes start to reveal, you start to discover there's a diary, and you start to realize that she had a real impact and a negative impact on this person's life, and there needed to be some sort of culpability to that. And working with Bill and trying to figure out where that happens and where that tone is, and because it is quite crazy and goofy and outrageous, this thing happens. And then, where are those very specific moments that we get very, very real, that this was wrong, and that she is taking some ownership for her behavior.
And I feel like the latter episodes is very much her saying, I want to be held accountable for all of the things that I've done. And, we see her initially getting apprehended and then realizing, wait, actually, they're letting me go. And so she blows up a house that they're forced to. And so what was kind of like almost some of the fun in the space of playing a character
Oh,
who wants to be accountable for herself, but really doesn't have the tools to do it in the proper way.
yeah, I mean, she's really, I mean, she's slightly delusional. Let's just say that. Maybe more than slightly delusional. And that's the joy of getting to play her. I think that, there's a lot of things that she says that she wants, but she doesn't really know how to go about getting them. And, I think perfect, example of that is blowing up the house next door to Yancey's, and somehow feeling like, okay, that's going to finally get me behind bars. Like, I really had to go to an extreme, but like, I feel great about this now. That was really one of my favorite scenes to get to shoot. It was so fun, and so crazy, and it was one of those things where, the whole house just went up in flames. And I was like, all right, you got one take to just throw that gas can. And, it was just a really fun way to kind of walk into the third act, I think, for that character, for Bonnie. It was really, really fun.
Right, because there's so many elements in terms of a lot of characters where they're going through some sort of journey and they'll make one step forward but then two steps back.
That's
But
right.
I feel like none so much as Bonnie, who really takes like five steps back for each step forward, even down to like she's finally behind bars, but then she flirts with one of the guards and they help her escape.
That's
So did you
right.
find that she was even more kind of non-linear than other characters that you played?
Yeah, I think it was. She was very nonlinear in that regard, and I think nonlinear in a way that's like unique to most scripts and characters that I play. And so, there's always sort of that, you're always looking at the arc, right? The beginning, middle, and end. And with Bonnie, I just feel like, oh, she's just getting started. You know what I mean? It's like now we just know who Bonnie is, and now we fully understand like her abilities, to kind of zigzag through life. And so I feel like we're just starting to tap into who she ultimately is.
Yeah, and there's this element of her that, she says that she wants things that feel very stable, but she's always chasing the chaos. And I think it kind of goes back to the way that you were describing probably what her childhood was like at the beginning, that that's something familiar to her because she's even like, why am I always attracted to, guys that will fight for me or, she loves it. And so what
Exactly.
did you find in her in terms of the way that she's just in essence always trying to like create and chase chaos when it doesn't already
Yeah,
exist?
she is. She's a bit of a chaos agent, isn't she? I mean, I think she is fueled by drama. I think she's the type of person that just can't sit still in her house and be comfortable on her own. I think she's always constantly in search of something. And I think it's finding that, ultimately, like, what everybody wants and needs in life is love, companionship. And she probably hasn't found a companion that's actually been not toxic, and I think Yancey, for example, is not toxic. I think that's why she's drawn to him, because he is a very kind of solid and good-natured personality. He's a good human. And I think she loves all of those qualities. Um, so yeah, I think she's constantly in search of just probably creating all the drama and the chaos until she finds the one, or until she can finally settle down with someone or something.
And there's something quite sweet about the scenes that she has when she meets Yancey's dad as well, because it feels like that's someone that's able to communicate with her on a different level that we don't really see through the other characters. And did you feel that that was part of the catalyst of her kind of starting to try to recognize her mistakes a little bit more?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, oh my gosh, the great Scott Glenn, getting to work opposite him was incredible. He's an amazing man, an amazing actor. And yeah, I mean, I think that Yancey is someone that has spoken of great fondness about his father, and so she knew of him. And I think that she probably was taken by him because he is so grounded and so settled, and has kind of these wise these wise ways about him in the world. And I think that, that was like a very big turning point for her when she was out and then got to confront a manatee, and felt like the manatee spoke to her. And of course, she'll even create drama underneath the sea. Um, yeah, and I think that was a big turning point for her, and for him.
But even within all the chaos, even her going swimming and being like, the manatee was talking to me and this is what it was telling me, but taking completely the wrong interpretation and message.
Yeah.
Um, Everything still feels very grounded with her at the same time. This is a character that could have landed more into the space of the caricature, but because of the way it's so adeptly written and the performance that you've given, it still feels very grounded and connected, and you constantly want to know more about her. And so, how did you make sure that you're always giving her those touch points to kind of bring her back down amongst the chaos?
I think that's one of the greatest things that we can do as actors, right? No matter what kind of material that we're given, we always want, I always personally want to connect with it in a very real way. Even as outrageous as it might be. I think there's always we can find those moments in which we can relate to. And it's our job to create a character that audiences want to watch, that are compelled to watch, but also, feel moved by, even amongst the chaos, right? And so I loved finding those little moments. I love that scene in particular with Scott Glenn, and it's nighttime and we're sitting outside in front of the fire, and you know, she's having a real heart to heart with him, and she's realizing a lot in the error in her ways. And, that was just a beautiful scene that they had written, and it allowed me kind of the space and the freedom to really ground myself for that, and for her to actually really have some sense of awareness, which I thought was really important for her to have.
Yeah, I think she's the perfect encapsulation of the characters that I love watching the most on screen, but never would want to spend a minute with in real life.
Exactly. Well said. Well said.